Hey everybody, what's going on? It is James here, and I'm going to sit down today and do a quick market update. Before I jump into the content, please remember I am just some guy sitting in a spare bedroom. That means that nothing in the video is financial advice. You should always go out and do your own due diligence and seek out professional financial advice from a licensed financial advisor for making any type of investment in cryptocurrency, the stock market, precious metals, forex, or any other tradable asset. Long story short, this is the chart that I posted up in November of 2021. It was predicting that Bitcoin was in a bubble. But a lot of people didn't understand this chart, and some people even tried to argue with me about this chart, saying that I couldn't do this. This was what's called a relative strength chart. It was gauging Bitcoin versus the NASDAQ. What was really interesting was the NASDAQ was in a huge bubble itself, which is now obvious to see, and Bitcoin was in a bubble versus a bubble, which made it even worse. But bottom line was, this was the prediction. This was what I thought was happening. That we were in complacency and that we were going to dump from there. So if we want to take a look at where we're at now, we can pull up the same chart. All right, so here is a chart of the Bitcoin versus the QQQ, which is an ETF for the NASDAQ. And we can see here that this was that complacency area that I posted about in November, and down she went. If we are looking at a bubble chart, I personally believe that we are at anxiety, right? Just past anxiety. If you think about what anxiety means, right? If what's that phase supposed to be like? It's this dip is taking longer than expected. That's what anxiety is. Denial, we might even be approaching denial because, that's obviously the point of my investments are with great companies. They'll come back. But we are definitely, in my opinion, quickly approaching the panic phase of this thing. And once that panic sets in, that's where everybody realizes, oh shit, this is a bear market, and that's where people start dumping their investments even harder than what we've seen so far. So far, there's still people who are holding out a little bit of hope, maybe with the help of certain gurus that, the bottom is in. And again, anything is possible, but this is what I foresee happening. I do think we'll get some kind of bounce. If we get a bounce, it wouldn't surprise me if it's down around this level here, because that's, basically old support. And so we may get some kind of bounce there. That would be like the denial bounce, right? The little boom right there. And then I think we're going to see pure panic and capitulation where Bitcoin falls back down to these old levels that we saw back in 2020. If the QQQ falls to the same level it was in September of 2020 and Bitcoin falls down here, then Bitcoin will be around $8,000 to $10,000. If the QQQ falls less, then Bitcoin could be higher than that, 15, 16,000, 18,000, 20,000, who knows. If the QQQ falls more and Bitcoin falls against it, then of course Bitcoin could be even lower than $8,000. So this is what I think is happening. What I would say to anybody who wants to invest in any cryptocurrency long term, meaning more than a few weeks, I would say watch the stock market for signs that the stock market is done falling. And that might be an indication that crypto is also done falling. But until you see the stocks stop, I don't see very many scenarios where Bitcoin is going to go up while the stock market is falling. Now, here's something that's super interesting. I cannot explain this. I don't know what to think of it. Usually in a bear market, historically, alts do very, very poorly versus Bitcoin, okay? They tend to lose a lot of value. Bitcoin falls, alts fall faster. But what we saw in the last market cycle was we had this big move down on Bitcoin dominance, right? It had the pullback here, and then it hit its trend target down around 36%, almost perfectly. That was December/January, so December 2017, January 2018. And then Bitcoin started to regain control, right? Had this huge pump. Well, if we move over, to me, this looks a lot like consolidation before a big move. It could be that maybe this is actually like a falling wedge, and maybe that's why we're seeing consolidation. This is going to be some kind of wedge, which of course falling wedges are actually bullish in nature, meaning Bitcoin dominance would go back up. But I'm kind of wondering what the deal is with this, because if this does end up being some kind of breakout type of play, and alts make some kind of weird run against Bitcoin, we could see Bitcoin dominance fall down to around 26% according to this trend target. I don't know how that happens. I don't know what scenario would bring about alts gaining ground against Bitcoin like that. I really don't. I just thought it was interesting. right? One thing I do remember about the previous bear market in 2018 was alts did run against Bitcoin at the end. There was like a 2 or 3 month period where alts were still going up. A lot of people don't remember it this way. They remember it like everything crashed at once, but that's not actually what happened. Bitcoin topped in December of 2017 and then crashed by like 50%. But then you had coins like OMG. I know I had a bunch of OMG and it topped in like April of 2018, like 4 months later. Ethereum topped, I believe it was in January, so about a month after Bitcoin. You had a lot of alts, right? EOS, I think it was March or April where EOS topped out at. So I'm curious if we do get some kind of strange run on alts over the next couple months. I'm so skeptical of it because I'm like, it doesn't make any sense to me that stocks would be doing poorly and Bitcoin would be doing poorly and then alts would suddenly go up. So what I'm wondering, and this is what I'm wondering, is are we going to see some kind of dead cat bounce in all of the markets, like the stock market and Bitcoin, that kind of give alts that open door to kind of rush in and have that one last basically exit scam pump where they pump those alts up, get retail to FOMO in so that whales can, dump their bags on all that liquidity. That's what I'm wondering. So a couple interesting things about this chart. Number one, we did break south of our parallel channel, our big parallel channel. That was our uptrend going back, a few years basically. We broke south of it. We also broke south of this, bear flag. So boom, boom. So we do have a measured move that is pointing down to around $12,000, which lines up with all kinds of interesting things. For example, it lines up with the volume profile that's down around that level. So here's the run from March of 2020 till now. Huge volume gap, right? Point of control down around $10,000. So that bear flag actually points right to that area. So that's very interesting. If we're going for all of the history on Coinbase, there's still a level down here around $11,800 to $12,000. There's also a gap all the way down here, a smaller gap down around $2,800. So those are things to kind of keep in mind. But also more interesting is the fact that that's actually the long-term trend line. That yellow line right there is the long-term trend line. So it's actually, we just put it right back down to the mean, which is cliche market behavior, right? All markets eventually return to the mean, either through a price correction or through a range where it time corrects and just ranges sideways until the mean actually catches up to price. So I'm not a guy that likes to lay odds or anything, but if somebody asked me, they put a gun to my head and said, give me odds. What do you think the odds are Bitcoin will go down to $12,000 in this cycle? I would say 90%. I lean 90% that it will go down to $12,000 before this is all said and done. Now, again, it could bounce before then. Markets don't move in straight lines. All the cliches are true, but I definitely think that $12,000, $8,000 to $12,000 is where it's headed. Right now, do keep in mind that we are coming down into all this demand area, right? These were areas that price bounced at previously. So again, it makes perfect sense to me that there would be some kind of counter trend rally, or what they call it, a dead cat bounce, maybe back up to this level or maybe even higher, right? To really get people sucked in before the next leg down. And maybe I'm saying that because that's kind of what I hope will happen, but I really do think that that's a very, very potential, possibility. So the other thing to keep in mind is the RSI has fallen out of the bottom of this bear market box. That is very unusual market behavior. The only time it did that in the 2018 bear market was right at the end of it. In November of 2018, stocks melted down and it took down crypto with it. When it dipped outside of it in March of 2020, that was a massive buying opportunity. And of course, price skyrocketed. Dipped outside of it in January 2022, massive buying opportunity. Price got down around 33K for rising to nearly 50K. But this box is like just a weird little box. I don't know why it works. I just know that it's worked for me now for 3 years now, since I first started talking about this weird box I noticed where price likes to consolidate between this 40 and 55 zone, right? You can see how it was just perfect resistance through here, perfect support, right? Resistance here, perfect support all through here. We can see perfect support here in July of 2021, right? Some sloppy support here in January of 2022, perfect resistance in March of 22. So now we are outside of it. So that's very strange, right? Again, that leads me to believe that, there could be some kind of bounce in the cards. If we're looking at the daily chart for Bitcoin, again, there's that blue channel that was our uptrend that's now been broken. Here's our yellow bear flag. So, that's all the things we just talked about. Our 50 moving average is way up here around 41,000. Our 200 moving average is way up here at 46,000. So this was very, very cliche market behavior, right? Broke through the 200 bearish retest, and of course you would expect more downside from there. Okay, so very, very, very cliche behavior on Bitcoin. If we take a look at the CME, okay, so there's the CME. If we go back and look at all trading volume of all time in the CME since it launched in December of 2017, we can see that the volume profile does give this big ledge down around $12,000. Point of control is down around 9,800. It's kind of suspicious because there's a gap back there. Anybody remember that gap? $9,600 gap. Oh, right at the point of control. Very strange, right? Also, if we measure this bear flag target down, up, down, the measured move target's $11,975. These purple boxes are all gaps on the daily chart, and so again, I expect every single one of them will fill. All right, but markets don't move in straight lines. And I think it's a dangerous idea to try to look for short positions on a market that has basically moved straight down about 25% over the last 6 days. That is a really big move down, right? Without any kind of relief, 25% in 6 days. So you can see that RSI is very, very oversold. Again, bear markets, oversold RSI doesn't mean a whole lot. But when you take that and you combine it with the fact that there's a really big volume spike right here, that could be a temporary capitulation candle where we do get some kind of move back up. I know that there was over $250 million in Bitcoin liquidations over the last couple of days, so a lot of people did get liquidated, and it could be that market makers, whales, whatever you want to call them, did use that liquidity to enter into short-term long positions. So we'll have to see how that goes. So there's Bitcoin. Okay, let's look at the US 100 real quick. Take all these day trading moving averages off. Look at the weekly chart. Oh man, that chart looks bad. That chart looks really, really bad. The crazy thing about all this is everything that's happening is so cliche. There were so many people that were well respected, supposed to be gurus, whether it was social media gurus or talking heads on TV. And they were just telling people to buy. And then you got some guy like me sitting in a spare bedroom. I've been doing this 5 years, last week, maybe my 5th anniversary. And I'm looking at this going, why isn't everybody else saying the same thing I'm saying? And a lot of people were. It wasn't like I was alone. There was a lot of us, smaller guys, if you want to call us that or whatever, retail traders who were like, this is obviously bad, right? So here's a post from February 11th. This was actually on the SPX. Right? Perfect double top pattern. There's the retest. And what do you get after a retest? You get downside. What happened? That's exactly what happened. I made a post. I didn't find it. And I'm not going to dig all through Facebook to find it. But I made a post about this US 100 chart when this happened. And the post was literally the bubble chart showing this as complacency. Right? This was the top, euphoria. This was complacency and then downside. And I posted it on March 7th. Right here on this red candle. And I said, this looks like what's happening. Expected the complacency bounce and then expected more downside, right? It's crazy to me that these famous people, if you want to call them that, I don't know if they have no conscience or what the deal is, but I really believe they knew this was happening and just didn't care. They just kept telling people to buy. And maybe they're doing it so they could get out of positions. Who knows? But this is extremely cliche, right? So from this top to this bottom, that pullback was right to the 61.8, the quote-unquote hodler soul-crushing zone. Now we have a measured move that we can take out, and we can say, hey, look, here's the top, here's the bottom, here's a pullback, right? Measured move down to 1545. Other people might say, no, I don't like that. I'm going to use this one here. There's the first move. Here's the pullback. And then the measure moves 12,320, which we just hit. I'm not sure which one's going to end up being the right one. But again, if you think about it in terms of, are we going to bounce? This one almost seems like, hey, maybe that's the right one. We just hit that target. And look what else we're hitting. This was supply back here, right? Left behind a wick, broke through it, came back down. Once you go above supply, it turns into what? It turns into demand. Boom. So resistance flips to support, pulled over, and boom, we're back down into the demand zone. So this would be a very textbook area to bounce on the US 100. And since Bitcoin is heavily correlated to the US 100, it would also make sense that Bitcoin bounces. And by the way, if there is anybody watching this video who is still believing this crypto Kool-Aid nonsense, that Bitcoin is a store of value or that it's not correlated with the stock market, I think I did a video on this before, but if not, I'm just going to quickly point this out. You can literally put an indicator on the chart and it measures correlation coefficient. It's a built-in indicator on TradingView. So this is the correlation measurement between Bitcoin and the US 100. It measures it between 1 and -1. -1 means it's total opposite. 1 means that it's got 100% correlation with that market. Bitcoin currently is sitting at a 0.8 correlation, roughly an 80% correlation to the US 100. Extremely correlated. So if we do get a bounce, and it would not surprise me to get a bounce, because again, this is a almost 21% move straight down. And that's in the stock market. That's not crypto, where that's not all that unusual. That's stocks. You're not supposed to get 20% moves down in stocks, right? That's insanity. So I think it's very likely we will get some kind of relief bounce so that they can trap bulls and wash out bears. And then this thing will melt down further. And when it does, I think that's when we see, Bitcoin completely just being, unfortunately, demolished, right? Another 80-90% drop from its all-time high, which is pretty standard for Bitcoin. That's what it does during its bear markets. By the way, one thing to note on Bitcoin, somebody asked me about this the other day, and they said something along the lines of, they just didn't think that it could take out the 200-week moving average, that it had never done it. Somebody else brought it up and said, do you think it'll take it out, right? Listen, the thing about the 200 moving average is it is a really strong line of support, and not just on Bitcoin. You can go look at tech stocks like Apple's and Google's and, Amazon's, and you'll find that it's a really, really strong level of support, but only in bull markets. In bear markets, price will cut right through it like a hot knife through butter. And so some people say, well, yeah, but every time Bitcoin had a bear market, it stops at its 200. It did it in 2015. It did it in 2018. It did it in 2020. And so right now, the 200-week moving average is at $21,800. So that's where it's going to stop at, James. No, I don't believe that's what's going to happen, because Bitcoin has never actually had a bear market at the same time as the stock market. Stocks have been in a global bull market nearly nonstop for the last 12 or so years, Bitcoin's entire life. So I do believe that we will chop right through that 200 moving average, and we'll go right back down to retest those levels I mentioned earlier. And this is another chart that I hadn't planned on talking about, but these are the levels that I'm looking for Bitcoin to go back to, somewhere between 4,100 and 12,200. If stocks can recover quicker than I expect, I think 8 to 12,000 will be the bottom. If stocks go really bad, I think we'll see Bitcoin retest the 2018 lows, right? Down around 4K or so. And possibly even fill in the old volume gaps down around 1,500. I mean, that's pretty crazy talk, but anything is possible depending on how bad stocks get. But for right now, I guess the word of the day is patience, because again, we are coming into a demand zone on Bitcoin. We are coming into a demand zone on the US 100, right? Where'd my lines go? They disappeared. All through here. Okay. If we let's look at the US 500 real quick. I don't want to take too long. The video's getting long. So here is the US 500, right? Same thing on it. Not quite as nice as the US 100, but there was this old level back here. And so we are retesting that old high. Again, super strong move down. So if we're looking at that move down, it also came up to the 61.8 fib, right in the golden pocket there. Left a wick behind. I mean, that was just like a textbook short position right there. And if we're doing a measured move on it, you know, we're getting very, very close to the 3,900 level, the 3,925 target there. So a bounce, again, in the cards, hard to say, but I would be very, very weary, just me personally, even as a bear. Everybody calls me a bear all the time, even though I'm not. I'm just a trader. But even as a quote-unquote bear, I'm a little bit skeptical to opening new short positions right now. Okay? So I think that's where I'll wrap things up. I don't know how long the video is, but long enough. So hope you enjoyed it. Again, just to remind you, I am some guy sitting in a spare bedroom. Nothing in the video is financial advice. You should always go out and do your own due diligence and seek out professional financial advice from a licensed financial advisor before making any type of investment in cryptocurrency, the stock market, forex, precious metals, or any other tradable assets. Do not forget. In fact, right now, stop what you're doing, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and go down to the description, check that description, and join one of my trading classes if you'd like to learn how to trade. You too will be able to spot these things in the future. And of course, if you don't want to learn how to trade and you just want more frequent updates and the occasional trading videos, then you can always join my Patreon for just $17 a month. This is James with Crypto Common Sense, reminding everybody to trade safe.